Hey everyone, welcome to Patrick Dugan Music. Wanted to take you behind the scenes here to kind of give you an idea of what it is I do as a musician to sort of keep this all going, to even do it in the first place. So here I am. You'll have to pardon my appearance. I did just get finished working out some, so I'm a little bit sweaty. But yeah, here we are in my wonderful bedroom in Kingsport, Tennessee. So, nothing fancy here. It's actually a guest bedroom at my parents' house. And you can see that I have some boxes here. Don't really have my stuff. It's not really my stuff per se. It's it's more of like my parents' stuff. And I've just been staying here. Came here meant to be temporarily. I guess that was around December of 2020 or January 2021. I was living in Chicago. I grew up in the Chicago area. So I was living out there. But I ended up coming down here to Kingsport, Tennessee, after I pretty much lost everything in a long-term relationship that ended up failing in a really painful and spectacular way. So I came down here to Tennessee because I have family in the area. It was also, I didn't really have a place to live at the time, so I needed a place to at least crash for a while to figure things out. So my parents were kind enough to take me in for a little bit. And my sister lives kind of close by, so that's nice too. So I came down here with pretty much zero money, terribly in debt with a bunch of different institutions, banks, credit cards, whatnot. I had essentially quit my music career for that particular relationship, so I didn't have much going on musically at the time. However, I did have an online teaching business that I had started before the pandemic and was able to transition to online lessons when the pandemic hit. So I came down here with my online teaching business and decided I was going to do a bit of healing. Needed to heal emotionally as well as psychologically. I had sort of been through, it seemed like a never-ending series of traumas there in Chicago for a while, which that's a completely different story. But yeah, anything that could have gone wrong basically went wrong up there. So when I arrived here in Tennessee, I had a lot of work to do. In terms of healing myself and getting better. But here I am. So after being down here for a few months, I decided that I wanted to make some YouTube videos. Kind of along the lines of to maybe advertise or support the online teaching business I had, but it also just looked like fun. I knew I had most of the equipment to do it. And I didn't really have any band. I didn't have a band to play with. I didn't really know anyone in this area. So I just decided, this would be a good thing for me to do. I can have some alone time. I can, get back to music. That always makes me feel better. So I decided I was going to make some music videos and put them up on YouTube. And that's kind of what got everything going, was that. And that kind of led me down the rabbit hole that I've been down, realizing that, at least from what I can see, sort of the future of the music business seems like it is essentially online now. And if it wasn't already there pre-pandemic, it was certainly there post-pandemic. And I realized that, hey, I can do this. I don't need other band members I have to rely on. I don't need a rehearsal space. I don't need to pay a recording studio thousands of dollars to record my stuff. If it's just me and my computer and my instruments, I can essentially just play everything and record the tracks separately. And I can have an entire self-contained presence, or an entire self-contained band essentially, and just put stuff up on YouTube. That was sort of the initial thought that got me into everything. So I started doing that, and as I was going, I was realizing that, hey, there's other people who've been doing this for a while, and they're also music teachers, and they're actually just teaching their lessons on YouTube. And I started to figure out that, this whole YouTube thing is a pretty big deal. You can get a number of subscribers on there. You can build a community. You can share your music. You can teach lessons. And eventually, if you keep doing it for long enough, you can eventually monetize the platform and turn it into a stream of revenue. So I started rethinking my entire approach to how I was operating, not only in terms of teaching music lessons, because I've been doing that for a long time, but also just in terms of performing and pursuing a music career. It started to make more and more sense to me that, hey, I can combine both of the two things I'm doing on this one platform, and I can reach a much wider audience of people than I ever would teaching one-on-one lessons or performing in local venues, in local bars and clubs and stuff. So it started to make sense that, hey, this is the thing that I'm actually really well equipped to do, and this makes a whole lot of sense going forward. So I started working on that. I also realized that in order to be successful at this, that I had to solve certain personal problems that had been haunting me for a while. I guess the biggest one would be some mental health issues with anxiety and depression, which I was having a really hard time managing and dealing with. So, and I did a number of things that really actually helped quite a bit. So I know there's a lot of people struggling with anxiety and depression these days. So you might also benefit from some of these things. But one of the first things I did, actually before I came down here, was I reached out, for help. I talked to some different therapists, talked to some different people. I did try some of the medications, some things like that. Ultimately, the medications weren't for me, but some of the therapies did help, specifically cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, was a good one. And CBT therapy kind of opened the door for me into mindfulness as a practice, which led me into meditation. Started to explore into meditation a little bit, read several books into it, took a couple different courses, online courses, I would say, about different techniques for meditation and mindfulness exercises. So I started incorporating mindfulness and meditation into my daily sort of health regimen that I started here. I would say I spend about half of my time doing personal health care and about the other half of my time doing music. So a typical day for me will be, I'll wake up around 8:30 a.m. or so, and I will try to immediately either read some in a book, Or a better idea is to sit down and meditate for about 20 minutes or so and sort of get my head in a good space to start the day. So starting the day on the right foot always seems to help. For some reason, for me, my anxiety is always worse in the mornings. So working on that first thing sets me up for success for the rest of the day. From there, I usually take a hike with my dog, Ramsey, and we'll go for about a 45-minute or an hour long or so hike in the woods, get some exercise. I'll come back. I'll probably work on something or another for an hour or two. And then I will get into my afternoon exercise routine, which will usually start off with about 20 minutes of yoga, followed by some weight training for about 20-30 minutes. And depending on the day, if I have time, I'll then go out for a jog for maybe about a 30 or 40-minute jog. So that whole thing will end up taking up, 2 or 3 hours, maybe max. I can get it done much quicker if I'm really pinched on time. I can just do the yoga or just do a short workout, but probably about 2 hours max. So I'll come home from that, and then if I have some lessons to teach, I'll go ahead and start teaching those. If not, the next thing I'm going to get into is I'm probably going to practice for about an hour or so. Just working on playing guitar and singing, going over new songs I might be learning, or just playing the old ones just to get my fingers moving and to make something happen. After that, depending on what time it is and what else I have going on, I will probably jump into recording. And I'll either work on a new song, or probably most likely a new video or some other music project I'm doing, but I'll have about 2 or 3 hours there to work on musical projects at the end of the day. And my day will end usually around midnight, 12:30 is when I'll stop working. I'll wind down for a little bit, do an evening meditation, do a nighttime meditation before I go to bed. Maybe 20 minutes or so. That'll get me really nice and relaxed. And then I'll go to sleep and wake up and do it all again the next day. So today is Memorial Day 2022. So I've been doing that routine. I came here a little over a year ago. I didn't have that regimen quite figured out until maybe about 6 months ago or so, but that's my daily routine, and I try to do that, try to stick to that every day of the week if I can, unless I make some plans or have a performance or something. But outside of that, that's it. So that's what I've come up with the best way to actually pursue this at a high level of intensity without burning myself out. And that's where I've failed in the past. And I'm sure that's where many artists and creative people fail, is you're working on something and you put tons of energy into it, and you don't really give yourself the time or space to sort of take a break and recharge a little bit. And once you burn out, emotionally and physically on something, it's probably impossible to keep doing it. Once you burn out, you're kind of done for at least a few months or years. I burnt out on a previous project, a previous band, and it took me kind of years to recover from that. It's just so emotionally and mentally exhausting if you completely burn yourself out like that. It's takes a long time to to fix. So you don't want to burn out. That's the biggest thing. And I realized that was the challenge when I sort of, came here to Kingsport, decided that I wanted to get back into music and to pursue a music career again. One of my biggest concerns was, well, this time I don't want to burn out. When I burnt out last time, it was not only emotionally and mentally, but also physically. I was neglecting parts of my body, and I got my wrists. I got carpal tunnel in both wrists from practicing too much and using the computer too much. And I think that was around the time that I actually was first diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. So burnout is harmful in a number of different ways, so you don't want to burn out. That's probably the most destructive obstacle you have to overcome. Because if you burn out, you probably can't recover from that, or it's going to take you a few years at least to get around to feeling like doing something with it again. So with the previous experience, I knew that burnout was enemy number one for what I was trying to do. So, and I knew that I had some pre-existing anxiety stuff, and I knew that my wrists were already kind of in a delicate state because I had kind of ruined them once before. So being mindful of all of these things, I decided, the only way I'm going to be able to do this is if I take lots of breaks, but I have to do it every day. I have to work on this as consistently as possible, but I have to do it in smaller chunks with lots of breaks in between. So I came up with the strategy that since I'm self-employed and working from home, I can essentially make my own hours. So I'm going to build into my workday all of this self-care and exercise to help prevent me from burning myself out. So that I'm only working on the computer, or I'm only focusing on a project, or trying to solve a problem, whatever it may be, there's only going to be a stretch of maybe 2 or 3 hours at a time that I'm sitting in front of that screen thinking about it, and making sure that I give myself a break, so that I can't get overwhelmed or overloaded on one particular thing, because there's just millions of things to think about when you're trying to do this. It's like an infinite puzzle that you're trying to put together, and you can't let yourself get too emotionally consumed in one little piece of this puzzle, because you can come back to that little piece. It might not even matter that much, but you start working on something and you start obsessing about this one little thing, and then a couple problems pop up and you might not have the answer right away, so you start to go down a rabbit hole of researching something, and it can create this thing where you get sidetracked and frustrated all at the same time, and you don't want that to happen. So you're limiting the amount of time that you can concentrate on whatever it is you're doing, and that's for your own protection. Essentially, that's to protect yourself from going crazy thinking about this stuff. So I came up with this plan, with this regiment, this sort of mental health, physical health regiment, because it became obvious to me that ultimately the health of my business and my success was directly linked to my physical and mental health. If I was healthy, the business could be healthy, but there's no way the business is going to be healthy if I'm not in a good place. So that was the mindset that I adopted into this, that these two things have to be connected. I can't prioritize one over the other. They're the same thing. The healthier I am mentally and physically, the more I'm going to be able to work, the better decisions I'm going to be able to make, the more creative I'm going to be, the longer I can play at a gig, and it just goes on and on and on. So once I sort of realized that, that's what motivated me to get into this health routine. I had been in good physical shape at other points in my life, but I hadn't really prioritized exercising in a number of years. So I was feeling pretty weak and out of shape when I started working out again, and I had to sort of ease into it. I actually started off just doing yoga, and then when the yoga started to feel kind of easy, I went for more like high intensity training yogas or vinyasa yogas that are a little bit more intense. Then I started getting into the strength training, and I just do it all here in this bedroom on this exercise mat. So I can pull up yoga classes on YouTube, and I downloaded an exercise app. So I have everything I need for strength training and everything right here, just in this one little bedroom. And if I want to, have some weights, I got my suitcase right here. Got this little handle on it, so I can pull this up. I can do some arm curls or something with this suitcase. If it's not heavy enough, I can put some stuff in there. So it's a pretty low budget operation here. It's mostly just the exercise mat and a loaded suitcase for some weights. But so you don't need a lot to exercise, but biggest thing is the motivation. My biggest motivation for exercising right now is to just feel better, to feel less anxious, to sort of feel more in control of my thoughts and my actions. And really, exercise is a really good way to actually do that. I think a lot of us have suffered from overstimulation in the age of cell phones and laptops and social media and news and politics and COVID and all this stuff. When you have all of these thoughts and concerns, or just problems, things that seem like problems to you, when all of that stuff is swirling around in your subconscious, it's going to start affecting you, and that's essentially what anxiety is. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the flip side of anxiety, it's really a double-sided coin. On the one side, there's the anxiety, but on the other side of the same coin is depression, because think about it like a computer that is not doing anything. It's just an idling computer, but some sort of program in the background is running and all of the RAM memory is being used, so that if you want to go onto the computer and just do a normal task, open a program and do something on it, the computer is going to be super slow, unresponsive, it might crash, things like that. That's kind of like anxiety. You get these thoughts, these concerns, these worries, these problems, these whatever things that are bothering you. Even if you're not thinking about them, they're taking up energy in your head. So they're making it harder for you to think about things that are happening right in front of you. They make it harder to think about your present situation, because you're losing all of this brain power to this, to these subconscious thoughts that are sort of swirling around. So, it appears to be a really common thing these days. And there's no wonder why. There's no shortage of problems to be concerned or upset about. And, unless you are completely ignorant or just have your head in the ground or just don't care, to me, I think that any sort of intelligent, empathetic person would be able to see the current state that things are in. And, feeling anxious about that, I don't know how you couldn't feel anxious about that, to be honest. I was having anxiety problems before, well before 2020, but man, with everything that's going on, I don't know how anyone is not having anxiety problems, to be honest. But that doesn't mean that any of those things have to consume you. What I've learned is that you can still care about these things. You can still be concerned. You can still want to change them. But you can also sort of let them be a little bit. You can let those thoughts die down a little bit in your subconscious. They don't have to be present. They don't have to be setting off the alarm bells all the time. And that's where I think the exercise and the meditation come in. The exercise is going to really help sort of get the chemical levels right. When you exercise, your brain is going to release certain chemicals, which are going to help. They're going to make you feel a little bit better. And it's also going to clear your mind some. So that'll help sort of calm the waters a little bit. But I think that meditation is really key with this. So if you're suffering from anxiety and you haven't tried meditation yet, I would strongly recommend that. Like I said, I tried basically every medication under the sun, and I found that none of them really addressed the underlying problem of anxiety. They kind of just covered it up a little bit. They would numb you, they would make you sleepy or tired or kind of out of it or kind of dazed or medicine head feeling. So maybe you wouldn't care so much, but it didn't really do anything to actually address the underlying anxiety. So once the medication wears off, all of that stuff is still going to be there just as bad as it was or worse. And then you're just going to have to take the medication again. And you're just going to have to keep taking more and more medication. As you build up a resistance to it, it becomes less effective. And there's no end to that treatment. If you go the medication route, you'll be taking medication essentially for the rest of your life and increasing doses. When I was on some of those medications, I gained a bunch of weight. I became tired and lethargic. I started falling asleep in my car behind the wheel or nodding off. Luckily, I didn't get in any crashes, but it did cause some problems. And, I nearly crashed at least a dozen times, just kind of falling asleep at the wheel. So obviously, it's up to you to make some of those decisions. But I would say my experience has been that a better approach is to try to manage the anxiety by using a combination of tools like CBT therapy, meditation, exercise, reading, playing a musical instrument, connecting with other like-minded people, going outside in nature, doing things like that, rather than the medication. Because those things will actually help you build up a resistance to the anxiety itself. It's not like you can ever get over it. You can never really get rid of it. If you're someone who, suffers from anxiety, essentially you're just, there's nothing really wrong with you. You're just probably more of a sensitive person who cares a little bit more about things. And you're able to see some of these problems. When you realize that there's not much you can do, that's just a terrible feeling. But just like you can work out and you can improve your strength and your endurance, you can also improve your mental endurance towards stress and traumatic things. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be impacted. When things happen, you still will, and you'll still feel that anxiety, but you can get to a point where it's not going to stick onto you so much. And that's what I've been pursuing with all of this exercise and meditation, is basically just kind of gently rewiring my brain a little bit, consciously, not through drugs, but consciously rewiring my brain a little bit, and getting to a point where I can manage the anxiety really well. That's what I've been working towards, and I feel like I'm actually really pretty close. Like I said, I've been doing this exact routine for about 6 months, but I started playing around with the idea of coming up with the routine about a year ago, and it took me several months of tweaking it to get things to where they are now. So that's what I do on a daily basis. Try to be grateful every morning for a new day and a new opportunity and a second chance to try to create the life that I want to have. So that's my mindset. It's how I ended up in Kingsport, Tennessee, and that's what my daily routine looks like, and that's how I'm going to get this done. I also have my sidekick and best friend Ramsey here with me to cheer me on. He's not in the room right now, but I'll get him in a future video.